Min-jae entered Seoul Crest High with his scholarship letter folded in his pocket and fear folded tighter in his chest. His uniform was clean but softened from too many washes. The button didn't quite match. His sneakers were scuffed at the toes. Students glanced, whispered, looked away. He was used to being invisible. He came here to survive, not to stand out. Then he saw Zara Cole. She sat near the window, posture effortless, presence magnetic. Black, striking, 17. Her hair caught the light differently than anyone else's. Teachers respected her. Students watched her. The room felt calmer when she spoke. Min-jae's heart stumbled, not because she was beautiful, but because when his name was mispronounced, she corrected it gently. He didn't know Kang Jun-suk was already watching. 18. Fencing captain. Untouchable. And in Jun-suk's world, interest was ownership. The warning would come soon. It's a new year, and while others scroll past stories like this, you stayed. That means you care, you feel, you don't want to miss moments that remind us we're alive. So subscribe, join this family, and tell me where you're watching from. Your presence matters more than you think today. Min-jae's first step into Seoul Crest High felt like crossing a border he didn't have papers for. The hallway stretched wider than any school he'd attended before. Marble floors gleamed under fluorescent lights. Students moved in clusters, their laughter echoing off walls that seemed designed to amplify confidence. Everyone belonged here. Everyone except him. He adjusted the strap of his backpack, fabric worn thin at the edges, zipper held together by a safety pin he'd attached that morning. His uniform was clean. His grandmother had ironed it carefully the night before, her hands trembling slightly as she smoothed the collar. But the fabric had been washed so many times it no longer held the deep navy it was supposed to. The button at his collar was sewn with thread half a shade lighter. His sneakers squeaked softly against the polished floor, scuffed white canvas that had carried him through 2 previous schools. A girl with perfectly styled hair glanced at his shoes, then away. 2 boys near the lockers whispered something, their eyes sliding past him like he was scenery. Min-jae kept his shoulders slightly hunched, his gaze lowered. Attention had always cost him something, a comment, a laugh, a reminder that he didn't fit. He'd learned years ago to make himself smaller, quieter, less. He wasn't here to make friends. He was here because his entrance exam scores had been high enough to earn him a scholarship Seoul Crest couldn't ignore. Grades were survival. Discipline was armor. Invisibility was strategy. Room 3B was at the end of the corridor. When he entered, the classroom felt like stepping onto a stage mid-performance. Conversations paused. Eyes lifted. Min-jae felt the weight of assessment. Quick, efficient, dismissive. He bowed slightly to the teacher, mumbled his name, and moved toward an empty desk near the back. That's when he saw her. Zara Cole sat 3 rows ahead, near the window where morning light pooled across her desk. She wasn't doing anything extraordinary, just reading, her posture relaxed, one hand holding a pen that tapped a slow rhythm against a notebook. But something about her presence shifted the room's gravity. She was black, 17, with hair that fell in natural curls she'd pulled half back with a simple clip. Her uniform fit the way uniforms were supposed to, neat, unremarkable, except on her it looked effortless. She wasn't trying to be noticed, but people noticed anyway. The way she held herself suggested she'd already decided her worth and didn't need confirmation. Min-jae sat down carefully, his breath caught somewhere between his ribs and throat. The teacher began roll call. When she reached his name, she hesitated, mangling the syllables. Minute. Min-jae. Min-jae. Heat crept up Min-jae's neck. He started to raise his hand, to correct her quietly. But Zara spoke first. Min-jae, she said gently, turning slightly in her seat. This sounds like a... The teacher nodded, corrected herself, moved on. Zara glanced back briefly, offering Min-jae a small smile. Not pity, not curiosity, just acknowledgement. Then she returned to her notebook. That smile landed heavily in Min-jae's chest. Later, during the first period, Min-jae's textbook slipped from his desk, hitting the floor with a dull thud that made several students glance back. Before he could retrieve it, Zara nudged it toward him with her foot, her eyes still on the board. You dropped this, she whispered without turning around. Min-jae picked it up, his fingers trembling slightly. Thank you. She didn't respond, but he saw her lips curve faintly. These were small things. Quiet things. The kind of gestures that disappeared into the background of a normal day. But for Min-jae, who had spent years learning not to expect kindness, they felt like earthquakes. He didn't know he was being watched. Kang Jun-suk sat 2 rows to the right, near the door where he could see everyone who entered or left. He was 18, a year older than most of the class, having repeated a year not because of grades but because his family's influence had made consequences optional. He was tall, broad-shouldered from years of fencing training, with the kind of face that photographs well and knew it. Captain of the fencing team. Son of a prosecutor whose name appeared in news articles about corruption cases that never quite stuck. Teachers addressed him carefully. Students laughed at his jokes before he finished delivering them. Jun-suk had noticed Zara months ago, not her appearance first, but her indifference. She didn't watch him when he entered rooms. Didn't lean in when he spoke. Didn't orbit his attention like everyone else. That indifference had fascinated him, then irritated him, then calcified into something he called interest but felt more like ownership waiting to be claimed. He hadn't asked her out yet. He was planning something memorable, something public, something she couldn't refuse without embarrassment. But now, watching this new scholarship kid, this nobody with his mismatched button and worn sneakers, looking at Zara the way people looked at things they wanted but couldn't afford, something cold settled in Jun-suk's stomach. After class, Min-jae was at his locker when a hand pressed against the metal beside his head. He flinched, turning. Jun-suk stood close enough that Min-jae could smell expensive cologne and something sharper underneath. Sweat from morning practice, maybe, or just the scent of someone who'd never had to be afraid. Jun-suk wasn't shouting. Wasn't threatening. He was smiling. You're the new scholarship kid, he said calmly. Min-jae, right? Min-jae nodded, his throat dry. Smart, Jun-suk continued, his smile never wavering. Getting in on merit. That's impressive. Really? Thank you, Min-jae whispered. Jun-suk's smile widened slightly. Just remember something. People like you come here to study. To focus. To succeed. He paused, his eyes flicking briefly toward the classroom where Zara was still gathering her things. You don't get distracted by things that aren't meant for you. Understand? Min-jae understood perfectly. I understand, he said. I'm sorry. Good. Jun-suk stepped back, his hand leaving the locker with a soft metallic tap. Keep your head down. You'll do great here. He walked away, his posture loose, confident, unbothered. Min-jae stood frozen for a long moment, his heart hammering against his ribs. He gathered his books with shaking hands, closed his locker, and headed toward the stairs. But as he walked, something stubborn stirred beneath his fear. An image. Zara correcting his name. Zara nudging his book back. Zara smiling without needing anything in return. The danger wasn't that Min-jae liked her. It was that he didn't know who else already believed she belonged to them. The bonding happened in margins. During group work for world history, Min-jae and Zara were assigned to the same team along with 2 other students who contributed nothing but showed up for credit. They were researching post-war economic recovery, and while the others scrolled through their phones, Zara and Min-jae divided the work without discussion. I can handle the research if you want to organize the presentation, Zara offered. Min-jae shook his head. You're better at speaking. I'll do research and formatting. You make it sound interesting. She looked at him curiously. How do you know I'm better at speaking? You corrected the teacher about Korean pronunciation without making her feel stupid, Min-jae said quietly. That's a skill. Something flickered in Zara's expression. Surprise, maybe recognition. They worked in the library after school twice that week. Min-jae noticed things. Zara preferred typing her notes instead of handwriting them because her thoughts moved faster than her pen. She drank tea, not coffee, and always added too much honey. When she was concentrating, she twisted a curl around her finger absently. He never mentioned these observations. He just adjusted. Brought an extra tea bag when he made his own. formatted documents the way she liked without being asked, caught small errors before she had to search for them. Zara noticed too. Min-jae never interrupted when she was thinking, never dismissed her ideas to insert his own. When she struggled explaining a concept, he listened until she finished, then offered clarification without condescension. "You don't talk over people," she said one afternoon, looking up from her laptop. Min-jae blinked. "Why would I? Most people do." He shrugged. "I like listening to you think. You connect things differently." Zara held his gaze for a moment longer than necessary, then returned to typing, something warm settling in her chest that she didn't have a name for yet. But kindness, especially between them, was becoming dangerous. The attack started small. Min-jae's presentation files disappeared the morning they were due. He'd saved them on a USB drive that he kept in his pencil case, but when he checked during homeroom, the drive was there, just corrupted, unreadable. "Technical difficulties," the teacher said sympathetically, giving him an extension. Zara watched Min-jae's face remain carefully neutral, but she saw his hand shake slightly as he packed his bag. The next week, someone spilled juice across Min-jae's desk during lunch break while he was in the restroom. By the time he returned, his notebook, filled with weeks of notes, was soaked, pages bleeding ink into indecipherable smears. Laughter echoed from a nearby table. Min-jae stood there for a long moment, staring at the ruined pages. Then he carefully peeled them apart, salvaged what he could, and borrowed paper from another student to recopy what he remembered. He didn't accuse anyone. Didn't report it. Just started over. Zara, returning from the library, saw the whole thing. "Who did this?" she asked, her voice tight. "It was an accident," Min-jae said without looking up. Min-jae. "It's fine, Zara." "Really?" But it wasn't fine. And Zara knew exactly whose table the laughter had come from. Jun-suk never did the sabotage himself. He didn't need to. He just made comments, casual observations that his followers transformed into action. That scholarship kid sits pretty close to Zara during study sessions. "I heard he's been borrowing her notes a lot. Must be nice having someone do your work. Poor people always find angles, don't they?" The word spread like slow poison, creating an atmosphere where cruelty felt justified, even righteous. But Min-jae's quiet endurance did something Jun-suk hadn't anticipated. It made Zara protective. She started sitting beside Min-jae during classes, not directly but close enough to make a statement. When group assignments were announced, she chose him as a partner before anyone else could interfere. When whispers started, she spoke louder, clearer, drowning them out with normalcy. "Min-jae, did you understand the chemistry problem? Can you explain it again? I liked your analysis in the essay. The historical context was solid." Small validations that built a wall around him, brick by brick. Min-jae never asked for this protection. Sometimes he seemed uncomfortable with it, as if kindness was a debt he couldn't afford. But Zara couldn't stop. Every time she saw him endure another small cruelty with that quiet dignity, something fierce woke up inside her. Founders' Day arrived with the weight of tradition. The entire school gathered in the auditorium for student showcases. Performances, speeches, presentations meant to honor the school's legacy. It was Soulcrest's most public event, where reputations were built or broken under stage lights. Zara had been preparing a spoken-word piece for weeks, something personal about identity and belonging. Min-jae had volunteered to handle the technical setup, lighting cues, sound levels, backstage coordination. 2 days before the event, Jun-suk made an announcement during lunch. He stood at his usual table, but his voice carried across the cafeteria. "I'll be introducing Zara Cole's performance at Founders' Day. Looking forward to supporting her." He said it like a fact, not a request. The cafeteria buzzed with interest. Several students nodded approvingly. Jun-suk and Zara, it made sense in the social calculus of Soulcrest. Power matching beauty. Influence aligning with grace. Zara's fork stopped halfway to her mouth. She set it down carefully, stood, and walked to Jun-suk's table. The cafeteria quieted. "I didn't ask you to introduce me," Zara said calmly. Jun-suk smiled, confident. I know. I'm offering. It's an honor. No. The word hung in the air like a dropped stone. Jun-suk's smile tightened. Zara, I'm just trying to. I already have someone handling my setup, she interrupted. Min-jae will manage the technical elements. I don't need an introduction. Every eye in the cafeteria shifted toward Min-jae, who sat frozen at a corner table, his lunch untouched. Jun-suk's expression darkened. You're choosing him. I'm choosing who I trust, Zara said evenly. Then she walked back to her seat, picked up her tray, and sat down beside Min-jae. The silence was absolute. Min-jae stared at his food, his face burning. Zara, you didn't have to. Yes, she said quietly, I did. Founders Day came. Zara's performance was powerful, her voice steady, her words cutting through pretense to something raw and real. Min-jae operated the lights from backstage, his heart pounding not from technical stress but from watching her be so completely, unapologetically herself. When the applause erupted, Jun-suk didn't clap. That evening, Min-jae returned to his locker to find it vandalized. Not destroyed, that would have been too obvious. But marked. Crude words scratched into the paint. His lock jammed with something sticky. His spare notebooks torn at the corners, pages bent backward. Zara was passing by when she saw him standing there, staring at the damage with that same terrible patience he always wore. In that moment, she didn't see a poor boy being bullied. She saw someone being crushed for the crime of existing in a space someone else had claimed. Min-jae, she said softly. He didn't turn around. I should probably just keep my distance. From you. From everything. No, Zara said, stepping closer. You shouldn't. I'm making things worse. You're not doing anything wrong. Her voice shook with something between anger and heartbreak. You're just here. And that shouldn't be dangerous. Min-jae finally looked at her, his eyes tired and sad and still somehow kind. But it is, he whispered. The confrontation happened during ethics class, where irony went to die. The teacher had assigned a discussion on privilege and responsibility. Students were supposed to share perspectives respectfully. Jun-suk raised his hand halfway through, his expression casual but his eyes locked on Min-jae. I think we should talk about gratitude, Jun-suk said smoothly. Some people get opportunities they didn't earn through family connections. They should remember their place instead of reaching for things meant for others. The room went still. Everyone understood the subtext. Min-jae's hands tightened around his pen. He kept his eyes on his notebook, his face carefully blank. But Jun-suk wasn't finished. I mean, scholarships are great, he continued, his tone dripping false sympathy. But maybe scholarship students should focus on academics instead of social climbing. Don't you think, Min-jae? Several students shifted uncomfortably. A few laughed nervously. Min-jae's chest felt tight, his breath shallow. Every instinct screamed at him to stay quiet, stay small, survive this like he'd survived everything else. But something Zara had said echoed in his mind. You're not doing anything wrong. You're just here. Min-jae stood up. His legs trembled. His voice shook when he spoke, but he didn't sit back down. I never asked for anything I didn't earn, Min-jae said quietly. I never tried to take anything from you. But you don't get to decide what I deserve or who I talk to. The classroom held its breath. Jun-suk's smile vanished. You think standing up makes you brave? You think. Enough. Zara stood, her voice cutting through Jun-suk's words like a blade through silk. He's not the one who needs to remember his place, Zara said, her tone calm but absolutely unyielding. You are. She looked directly at Jun-suk, and for the first time, there was no neutrality in her gaze, only judgment. I choose who I talk to, who I trust, who I care about. And you. She paused, letting the silence stretch. You're not on that list. The teacher finally intervened, her voice flustered, redirecting the discussion to safer territory. But the damage was done. Everyone looked at Jun-suk. For the first time in his life, power slipped through his fingers in front of everyone who'd ever feared him. That evening, Jun-suk did something he'd never done before. He followed Min-jae home. Not to threaten him. Not to confront him. Just to understand what kind of person could stand up to him with a shaking voice and still refuse to back down. He kept his distance, trailing several meters behind as Min-jae walked through neighborhoods that grew progressively shabbier. The buildings changed from clean modern apartments to older structures with cracked facades and flickering streetlights. Min-jae stopped at a narrow building above a convenience store, its entrance squeezed between a laundromat and a closed restaurant. Jun-suk watched from across the street as Min-jae helped an elderly woman, his grandmother, probably, carry grocery bags up the stairs. Watched him pause to hold the door for a neighbor struggling with a stroller. Watched him disappear into an apartment so small Jun-suk could see the entire space through one window. A kitchen-living room combination, a flickering ceiling light, textbook spread across a table meant for eating. Later, through that same window, Jun-suk saw Min-jae studying under that inadequate light, his posture hunched, his concentration absolute. No expensive tutors. No private study room. No backup plan if this scholarship failed. Just effort. Just discipline. Just survival. Something unfamiliar twisted in Jun-suk's chest. He'd never felt small before. Never felt like his own existence was empty despite being full of everything Min-jae lacked. He left before Min-jae could notice him, but the image stayed, lodged somewhere uncomfortable behind his ribs. The rumor appeared 3 days later. Someone had edited photos, screenshots from social media, images from school events, arranged to suggest a narrative that wasn't true. Zara laughing with Min-jae in the library. Zara sitting beside Jun-suk during an assembly. Text messages that didn't exist. Conversations that never happened. The caption read, "Playing both sides?" Zara Cole keeping her options open. It spread through group chats and social media feeds like wildfire, reshaping reality into something ugly and simple. By lunchtime, whispers followed Zara through hallways. Eyes tracked her movements with judgment and fascination. Several girls she'd considered friends suddenly found reasons to be elsewhere. Min-jae saw it during study hall. The post appeared on his phone, sent anonymously but clearly meant for him to see. His stomach dropped. His hands went cold. He found Zara after class, his expression tortured. "I'm sorry," he said immediately. "I never wanted. This is my fault. I should have stayed away. I should have." "Min-jae, it's a lie." "I know, but it doesn't matter." His voice cracked. "People believe it. And I'm the reason you're being hurt." "You're not." "I am." He stepped back, creating distance that felt like miles. "I'm the problem. I've always been the problem. I should just disappear." "Min-jae, please." But he was already walking away, his shoulders hunched in that familiar posture of someone trying to make themselves smaller, trying to take up less space in a world that had never wanted them. Zara stood in the empty hallway, her hands clenched into fists, something hardening inside her chest. That night, she posted one sentence publicly. "I don't like loud power. I like quiet honesty." No explanation. No defense. Just truth. The next morning, she walked into homeroom and sat directly beside Min-jae, who'd chosen a desk in the far corner as if he could physically remove himself from the situation. "Zara, don't," he whispered. "People are watching." She reached over and took his hand. Not tentatively. Not carefully. She took his hand and held it on top of the desk where everyone could see. Min-jae's breath caught. "You shouldn't." "I'm exactly where I should be," Zara said quietly. The classroom filled with students, conversations stopping as they noticed. Phones appeared, capturing the moment. Whispers erupted. And Jun-suk, entering last, stopped in the doorway. He saw Zara holding Min-jae's hand. Saw Min-jae's expression, terrified and grateful and completely overwhelmed. Saw the way Zara sat there with calm defiance, unbothered by the attention anchored in her choice. Something inside Jun-suk cracked open. Not rage. Not jealousy. Loss. But not loss of Zara. He understood that now, standing there watching her choose someone else with such absolute certainty. He'd lost something else entirely. He'd lost the version of himself he could have been if he'd learned years ago what Min-jae already knew. That strength wasn't taking what you wanted, but protecting what mattered. That power wasn't making people fear you, but making them feel safe. Jun-suk had spent 18 years building a throne out of other people's fear. And standing there, watching Zara hold Min-jae's hand, he realized his throne had always been empty. He sat down at his usual desk, surrounded by followers who immediately started whispering, expecting him to react, to explode, to reclaim his territory. But Jun-suk just stared at his hands. Hands that had never carried groceries for his grandmother, never helped a neighbor, never earned anything through effort instead of inheritance. For the first time in his life, Kang Jun-suk felt the weight of who he wasn't. And it was heavier than any crown he'd ever worn. The fallout was immediate and merciless. By the end of the week, Seoul Crest had divided into factions. Some students admired Zara's defiance. Others called her naive, accusing her of making a spectacle for attention. A few whispered that Min-jae had manipulated her somehow, playing the victim to earn sympathy. Min-jae heard every variation. In the bathroom, someone muttered, "Can't believe she downgraded like that." During lunch, a group of girls debated loudly enough for him to hear, "Maybe she feels sorry for him." Like charity work. Each comment landed like a small cut, individually bearable but collectively devastating. Min-jae started arriving early and leaving late, timing his movements to avoid crowds. He stopped eating in the cafeteria. He declined Zara's invitations to study together, making excuses about extra work, about needing to focus. "You're avoiding me," Zara said one afternoon, cornering him near the library. "I'm not." Min-jae. Her voice was gentle but firm. "Don't lie to me." He couldn't meet her eyes. "People think you're making a mistake. They think I'm using you somehow." "I don't care what they think." "But I do." His voice cracked. "Because maybe they're right. Maybe maybe you feel obligated because I'm pathetic and you're kind and—" "Stop." Zara stepped closer, her expression pained. "Is that really what you think? That I'm with you out of pity?" Min-jae's silence was answer enough. Zara took a breath, steadying herself. "I need you to listen to me. I didn't choose you because you're poor. I didn't choose you because I feel sorry for you. I chose you because when I'm with you, I don't have to perform. I can just be." "Zara." "You see me," she continued, her voice thick with emotion. "Not the version everyone else wants. Just me. And you never asked me to be anything different." Min-jae finally looked at her, his eyes red-rimmed. "I don't know how to believe that," he whispered. "Then let me show you," Zara said. "Every day. Until you do." The confrontation came on a Friday evening. Min-jae was locking his locker when he sensed someone behind him. He turned to find Jun-suk standing there, alone. No followers, no audience, no performance. Min-jae's body tensed instinctively, preparing for violence. But Jun-suk's expression wasn't angry. It was something worse, confused, almost lost. "I'm not here to fight," Jun-suk said quietly. Min-jae waited, his heart hammering. Jun-suk looked away, jaw tight, like the words were physically difficult to extract. "I need to understand something. Why her? Why does she?" He trailed off, frustrated. "What did you do?" "Nothing," Min-jae said honestly. "I didn't do anything." "That's not." Jun-suk's hands clenched. "People don't just choose someone for nothing. There's always a reason. Always an angle." "Maybe that's your problem," Min-jae said softly. "You think everything is strategy." Jun-suk's eyes snapped to his. "Then what is it?" Min-jae considered the question carefully. "I never tried to win her. I never tried to impress her or compete for her. I just tried to be kind. To listen. To see her as a person instead of a prize. That's it." Jun-suk's voice held disbelief and something rawer, desperation. "Just kindness." "Just kindness," Min-jae confirmed. Jun-suk stared at him for a long moment, something shifting behind his eyes, understanding, maybe, or the painful recognition of everything he'd done wrong. I followed you home, Jun-suk admitted abruptly. That night after class. I saw where you live. Saw you helping your grandmother. Saw you studying under that shitty light. He laughed bitterly. And I realized I've never helped anyone in my entire life. Not once. Not without wanting something back. Min-jae said nothing. I thought power meant taking what I wanted, Jun-suk continued, his voice barely above a whisper. But you have nothing, and somehow you have everything I don't. Jun-suk. I'm not asking for forgiveness, Jun-suk interrupted. I don't deserve it. I just... He paused, jaw working. I'm done. With the bullying. With trying to control things that were never mine to control. He met Min-jae's eyes directly. She chose you. And I finally understand why. Then, without waiting for a response, Jun-suk walked away. No threats. No final warnings. Just absence where dominance used to be. Min-jae stood alone in the hallway, his legs weak, his chest tight with an emotion he couldn't name. The following Monday marked the end of term. Students filled the courtyard during morning break, clustering in familiar groups. The weather had turned warmer, sunlight streaming through the trees that lined the school's entrance. Min-jae arrived at his usual time, backpack slung over one shoulder, preparing for another day of invisibility. But Zara was waiting at the gate. She wasn't hiding. Wasn't being subtle. She stood in full view of everyone, wearing her uniform and a small smile that transformed her entire face when she saw him. Ready? She asked. Min-jae's breath caught. Zara, you don't have to. I want to, she said simply. Then she held out her hand. Min-jae stared at her extended palm, at the choice she was offering, not just for today but for every day after. Around them, conversations stopped. Students turned to watch. Phones appeared. And somewhere in that crowd, Jun-suk stood with his usual group, watching without expression. Min-jae took Zara's hand. They walked through the courtyard together, fingers intertwined, steps matched. Whispers erupted. Some students looked away uncomfortably. Others smiled, tentative, genuine. A few nodded with something like respect. Zara squeezed his hand gently. You okay? Min-jae looked at her, really looked at her, and saw something he'd been too afraid to believe before. She wasn't holding his hand out of defiance. Not out of pity or obligation or some misguided rescue mission. She was holding his hand because she wanted to. Because she'd chosen him. Not despite who he was, but because of it. Yeah, Min-jae whispered, his voice thick. I'm okay. They reached the building entrance. As they climbed the stairs, Min-jae glanced back once. Jun-suk was still watching, but his expression had changed. No anger. No resentment. Just quiet acceptance, and maybe, buried beneath years of learned behavior, the first fragile seed of understanding. Their eyes met briefly. Jun-suk nodded once. Not surrender. Not defeat. Acknowledgement. Then he turned away, heading in a different direction, and for the first time in 18 years, Kang Jun-suk walked alone by choice instead of abandonment. Inside the classroom, Min-jae and Zara sat beside each other. His uniform was still faded. His sneakers were still scuffed. His button was still the wrong shade. Nothing about his circumstances had changed, but everything about how he saw himself had transformed. Because the girl everyone wanted had chosen him, not because he'd begged for love, but because he'd never tried to own it. Not because he'd competed for her attention, but because he'd offered his presence without demands. Not because he was rich or powerful or untouchable, but because he was real. And in a world that valued performance over authenticity, strategy over sincerity, dominance over dignity, that realness had been the rarest gift of all. Min-jae looked at Zara, who was pulling out her notebook, humming softly to herself, completely unbothered by the stares still following them. Thank you, he said quietly. She glanced up, her expression warm. For what? For seeing me. Zara's smile deepened. She reached over and squeezed his hand once more. Always, she said. And for the first time since arriving at Seoul Crest High, Min-jae believed that someone like him, with nothing but honesty, nothing but kindness, nothing but the quiet courage to be himself, could be enough. Not just enough to survive. Enough to be chosen. Enough to be loved. The boy with nothing had everything that mattered. And the most feared bully in school finally learned what strength actually meant. Thank you for staying till the end. Most people click away, but you didn't, and that means something. Don't disappear now, subscribe, stay close this year, and keep walking with us through these stories. Comment, share, and tell me where you're watching from. Your voice matters more than you know today.